These 12 books are rare, and I literally guarantee that you will not find them anywhere else on YouTube because they typically have 0 Amazon reviews. The average publication date is 1989, and it has cost me thousands of pounds and thousands of hours to condense this year's research of 133 psychology books into this golden stack of 12. Full disclaimer, if it's not abundantly clear, this is not a beginner-friendly video, and I am not going to entertain you into an idle, apathetic state with lots of B-roll shots of me pretending to read in scenic locations. This is for the people who want to study, and these are the books which personally matter the most to me in my mentoring work behind the scenes and that higher level effort after several years of already being on the inner work journey. So if you are at the initial stages, don't worry, I've got a 52 episode series, which is actually my response to this question, which, as an aside, is the inspiration for today's question. I didn't do just 10 books, I did 52, but these are my top 12 for the year anyway. It's the Q&A series, so I'm throwing this in, but we're doing the 12 of this year. Point is, Inner Work Essentials, already done that series. It took me 7 months. I read 350 books, and there are the top 52. These are the top 12 from this year. And my final point, you are going to forget that you watched this video, but the ideas and the insights in these books will last you a lifetime. And if you only buy 3 of these books from these masterful teachers, and I've done my job, and I've tried to make it as easy as possible, because as you can see, I've split them up into little substacks. So we've got 4 substacks. We've got the self-healing stack, we've got the therapist stack, we've got the Jungian/archetypal stack, and we've got the academic stack. Each of them made up of 3 books. I'm not going to make this a boring top 12 video where you jump around in the timestamps. We've got thematic themes for every temperament. All of that out the way, let's get into the video. I'm going to move at a very quick pace because time is limited and I just want you to buy these books. I don't really care if my description isn't the best. If you're interested, you're going to see the book and you're going to go, oh yeah, I should buy that, and then you're going to buy the book. Let's start with the self-healing stack. 3 books here. Primal Wound, The Trials of the Visionary Mind, and The Eden Project in Search of the Magical Other by James Hollis. The reason that these 3 books are at the top of my list for 2022 is because this book helps people to deal with spiritual emergencies or spiritual awakenings from a psychological perspective at one of the highest yet most accessible levels that I've found. I recommended it to clients multiple times this year. The Primal Wound is a book that I've held up before. You've seen me hold it up before. It is one of the best takes on addiction and personal development in the sense of the real psychological meaning of that term. Looking at the developmental stages and the different psychological abnormalities that lead us to traumatized addiction looping. And the 3rd book of the 3 and the self-healing stack, James Hollis, Eden Project. This is a wonderful Jungian style take on the animus image, or the internalized, externalized feminine and masculine, which keeps us looping around in all of those unfulfilling and potentially toxic relationships where we believe that we're going to find the magical other, forgetting that we are indeed the magical self. That's the self-healing stack, and this is the pace that we're moving at because I don't need to spend 50 minutes going through the video. I just want you to buy the books. Let's go to the therapist stack. So this is the professional development stack. If you're a healer, if you're a coach, if you're a therapist, these are the 3 books for you. Or if you're just someone who takes it very seriously, you go from the self-healing stack to the therapist stack, because if you want to learn how to heal yourself, you might as well learn how to become a healer. I think I just adjusted the lighting over there. 1 second. I'll turn this back down. And I turned it over this way. There we go. Should move that remote next time. Professional stack. Reality Game by John Rowan. This is the best single source guide to humanistic counseling and humanistic psychotherapy that I have ever encountered. It has got such a wonderful bibliography, and it is going to help you take your practice to the next level. It's truly worth reading. Next book is Core Energetics by John Pierrakos. I think I'm saying that correctly. This is a bioenergetic style approach. If you know Alexander Lowen and Wilhelm Reich, this is the forgotten third man who gets very little attention And when I read this book, I cannot believe that I put this off for 2 years because I should have read it back in 2020, and somehow I didn't. Fantastic take on the energetic systems within the human body and how trauma freezes us up. And the final book, Psychosynthesis. Roberto Assaigoli invented psychosynthesis as a transpersonal model of human development and healing, but John Furman and Ann Giller, they studied with Assaigoli and wrote this wonderful book, which honestly is actually better than any of Assaigoli's main texts. It's one of the top reads of the year because it just covers the whole theme of personal, transpersonal, spiritual, self-awakening, holistic development in such a high level and yet quite accessible. It's a hard read, but a definite read for any therapist or any coach out there. That's 2 stacks completed. We're now moving over to our Jungian archetypal stack. These are the books that deal with the Jungian archetypes. First, we've got Marion Woodman's The Pregnant Virgin. This book is wonderful for any woman to read and also every man to read because we look at the psychological stages of morality and wounding for the feminine. Buy this book. I recommend it to many clients. My female clients, they read this and they go, holy fuck, that's incredibly triggering, and yet it's incredibly useful. That's why it's a good book. And then we've got Puer Aeternus by, Marie-Louise von Franz. Sometimes forget, it's quite a long name. This deals with the internal and eternal child archetype. I'm moving at a very quick pace. I'm stumbling over my words. The point is just buy the books. Best book I found on the inner child and the developmental issues of the inner child, which we can hopefully overcome as we become mature adults. And finally, Jung's Map of the Soul. This is a book I also wish I had read 3 years ago because it is the best single source introduction to all of the Jungian ideas that I've ever come across. All the main bases are covered. I actually recommended someone on Instagram who asked me if he should read the Red Book without encountering Jungian ideas. I was like, no, just don't read the Red Book. I don't think it's that useful for most people who are doing inner work for self-healing. The Red Book, actually, got it right here, by Carl Jung, you can see that. I don't think it's worth reading, honestly. That's controversial to say. I'm not a Jungian. It reads like a potentially unhinged, schizophrenic-leaning journal. There's many mystical elements and there's many wonderful insights, but it's just not worth reading for most people. But a book like this is still absolutely fantastic because you'll encounter all the ideas around the archetypes and the unconscious and the different elements of the psyche and the persona in an incredibly readable but still incredibly academic way, whereas Jung himself can be a bit difficult to go into, but that's neither here nor there. It's your choice. That's the archetypal stack. Now the final stack, this is the academic stack. We've got Frames of Mind by Howard Gardner. This is the theory of multiple intelligences, his breakout book where he breaks out and basically says, yeah, there's multiple intelligences. The reason I'm bringing this book forward is not necessarily because it's incredibly useful to keep returning to, but the idea of intelligence being a performance was really a huge unlock for me, that any intelligence must be performed in a socially useful way to actually qualify as an intelligence. So we think of things like emotional intelligence or spatial intelligence or musical intelligence. They have to have a performative outer expression. Spoke about this a few times on the channel, and it's because of this book. It's a really good one to read if you want to understand the complexity of how intelligence develops in human beings. Next book. Slow down for this one. Embodied Spirituality in a Sacred World by Michael Washburn. If you haven't seen some of the titles, maybe the lights bam stuff, I'm going to put them down somewhere, maybe in the description or in the comments, you'll find out. This is one of the best books on transpersonal psychology as it relates to spirituality. It is an incredibly dense read. It is a high-level, advanced book. I've held it up before. If you like the sound of this book, I'm not going to go into any of the quotes. You can just see just how heavily highlighted this book was. Top read. Final book. My real top read of the last 2 months. Syndetic Paradigm, The Untrodden Path Between Freud and Jung by Robert Aziz. This book basically tears down Freud and tears down Jung from an incredibly critical, incredibly harsh, yet very well measured, very academic style. It's just so refreshing. It's so nice to see people step out of cult mentalities and do original thinking in a way that encourages new conclusions and potential synthesis of otherwise tribal-like mentalities. I'm not shitting on Freud or Jung in particular, but there needs to be more books like this, because this, again, literally, I think has 0 reviews on Amazon, and it's been slept on. The guy did a really good job with this book, and I recommend it to you. And guess what? We've reached the end of the video, but it's 2022. I've got a little surprise for you. We don't have just 12 books. I've got another 10, so we've got 10 extra 2022 22 books, and I'm going to rapidly go through these because these are the ones that are also useful but didn't make the top 12. We've got The Roots of War and Terror by Anthony Stevens, and this is a psychological look into terrorism and acts of human violence in the post 9/11 era. Really useful for understanding the human shadow. We've got Carl Rogers, Client-Centered Therapy, just an incredible professional development book, so you can work with your clients in a more compassionate and yet more direct way. We've got Marion Woodman's The Ravaged Bridegroom, Masculinity in Women, does what it says on the front cover. We've got another James Hollis book, The Middle Passage from Misery to Meaning in Midlife. This is not actually the book that I wanted to recommend. I've picked up the wrong book. What I wanted to recommend was this book, Swamplands of the Soul. Read too many James Hollis books. Don't read The Middle Passage. Read this one instead, because this one is about spiritual malaise and dark night of the soul. This one covers the same themes, which is why I picked it up, but just not in the same level of depth or clarity or interest. They're both useful. You might as well read both. They're like $10 each, but let's be correct. Freud-Adler Controversy goes into great detail, and the reason I'm holding this one up is that it allowed me to see a really useful piece of information that you can measure psychologists based on their clientele. Freud had mainly high-class clientele. Adler had more working-class clientele. Therefore, the theories of their psychologies of pathology were very different. And this is the book that really unlocked that perspective for me. Another John Perry book, same author as Trials of the Visionary Mind. We've got The Far Side of Madness, again dealing with spiritual emergencies. We've got Jung und Reich by John Conger. That talks about Carl Jung and Wilhelm Reich, the bioenergetic, often forgotten psychologist of the 20th century. He talks about the energetic systems. You can find out for yourself. We've got Archetype by Anthony Stevens, second Anthony Stevens book. This is a nice kind of in-between from transpersonal psychology and Jungian psychology when it comes to the archetypal systems. Again, every book that I'm holding up is my top books of all these 133, and I actually read 184 books this year, but about 50 of them were business and miscellaneous, so I'm not even including them. These really are the top percentage. Just consider buying them. Final 2 books. Anatomy of Human Destructiveness by Eric Fromm. Hopefully that just came up there. This is a book about evil and destruction and violence and mutilation and all of the shadow themes that we like to shy away from. It's a classic study. It's very difficult to read in terms of the emotional content, but if you're serious about understanding all of the most malevolent parts of humanity, then read a book like this, and we will finish in a paradoxical manner after having potentially devalued Jung based on the statements. I'm actually going to recommend Jung. This book is absolutely marvelous. This is The Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche by Carl Jung, which is the top book that I recommend that you read from Jung. It has the essay on synchronicity embedded within this book, and you already know what that word is. So if you want to read some Jung, read this book after having read, all the books are in a stack, Jung's Map of the Soul by Murray Stein. That's my 2022 year in review video. Please just buy 3 of the books. I've got frustration and I've got anger because I hate the fact that I'm going to make this video and it's going to be a piece of forgettable fucking entertainment when you could just go on Amazon and spend $30 and 30 hours of your life getting ideas that will change you for a lifetime. I'm not angry at you, I'm angry at the space itself, and the format doesn't work. I wish I were recommending these books to you in a private client session, because then you take it more seriously, but because I'm giving it away for free on YouTube, it somehow doesn't shine as brightly. But this has literally taken me thousands of hours, and it is all I do. I'm trying to give you the absolute best, so please just take it. But if you want to continue the YouTube rabbit hole, then here's the next YouTube video, and we're just going to go straight back down the distraction avenue, or hopefully not, who knows. But paradoxes continue. There's the next video.